If we're committed to attempting to undertake an integrative bargaining process, then we need to think through what that process entails, what it is, what steps that we'll need to go through. We've established that this is something that we think is important. We've identified the appropriate behavioural demeanour, a trusting environment, multiple channels of communication, and so on. But how do we actually do it? Now, the integrative bargaining process is effectively a problem-solving process. So the first stage in integrative bargaining is about problem recognition, problem definition, about being very clear about what the thing is that we're attempting to resolve. Now, it's very important at this stage to be clear about that. We may not know exactly what the problem is until we've gone a little bit more deeply into it. It may be that we need to revisit the nature and definition of the problem as we go through, because we may uncover various aspects or dimensions or layers to the issue as we attempt to resolve it. But the starting point is problem recognition, problem definition. Once we've done that, then our next stage is about identifying potential solutions to that problem. What manner of ways can we resolve this problem? Now, some of those may be fairly obviously untenable or unacceptable or unattractive for various reasons, but we get them all out onto the table. This is a brainstorming type of activity. And once we've identified the full range of potential solutions, we start to think through the consequences of those solutions. What does this mean in terms of the technical relevance or technical acceptability of the solution? What does it mean in terms of how this plays out for one side or other, for the different parties within the employment relationship? So that we're going into a process of evaluation, which finds the best balance of advantage, which provides the best solution to the issue that we're trying to resolve. And it might be that at this stage, as a result of our evaluation, we find that none of these solutions are really acceptable. And so we need to go back and brainstorm further, find new approaches to think more deeply, more innovatively, more imaginatively. Or maybe we need to go back to square one and reimagine the problem, to define it in another way which allows us to find alternative solutions. And we go through this process, find the solutions, evaluate the consequences, think through about what is the best solution to the problem at hand, and ultimately attempt to arrive at a mutually satisfactory solution. It's not about splitting the difference, it's not about finding a messy compromise, it's about finding the best outcome, the most imaginative, most innovative, the best outcome that solves our problem most effectively, whilst conferring as much advantage as possible on both sides of the relationship. Now, in order to do this, going through the process, then there are certain kind of behavioural elements that allow us to transit this process successfully. Our preparation for integrative bargaining is very important. We are often in a situation where, as bargainers, we're having to behave very differently to the ways in which we typically behave. So we're not going into this kind of situation to represent interests, and we're not attempting to steal a march on the other side. Now, as bargaining agents, it's important that we prepare our principals and have our principals on board, and that they fully understand the role and behaviours that we're going to adopt, that we're in problem-solving behaviour rather than simply in traditional beating each other up behaviour. When we open this kind of bargaining engagement, again, a big change from traditional approaches where we might set out a bargaining position. This is what we want. These are our goals. These are our aims. This is what we expect. These are our demands. But rather to provide a framework within which the negotiation might happen, to define the problem in the ways that we've talked about before. And then the bulk of the activity is all about exploring, upfront, unambiguous brainstorming, wide involvement, about finding imaginative solutions. Now, this is risky behaviour for bargainers. It's not something that bargainers are typically used to exposing themselves to, because in identifying all kinds of solutions, some of those solutions may well be detrimental to the side that you represent, and that exposes a weakness. And so there has to be an awful lot of trust in the relationship that you won't be disadvantaged by engaging in that. Once we've explored, as we've talked about, then the key behavioural task is to focus down from this large range of alternatives, refining them in order to maximise the potential for mutual gain. Now, at this point, it's only natural that bargainers will seek to steer the focus towards those solutions which advantage their side rather than the others. And it's important that bargainers try to resist that natural inclination, that they resist the temptation to suboptimize the mutual gain, to achieve less overall by getting a bit more for their side. And it's really at this point that the bargainer's intent towards integrative bargaining becomes tangible. Are they really in it in order to engage creatively in a mutually advantageous way, or is it a bit of a sham, that it's really just been a bit of a subterfuge in order that they can find another way to maximise their own gain at the expense of the other side? So having focused down, then it's about identifying the solution around which agreement will be achieved. Shouldn't be the least worst solution, shouldn't be it shouldn't be a splitting of differences, but a genuinely mutually satisfactory agreement. Having gone through this process, actually reaching agreement should feel relatively natural because of the amount and quality of the discussion that's taken place. Maybe more difficult to convince principals that this was the best deal available because we're optimizing around mutual gain, not the gain for one party against the other. So convincing principals that a better deal wasn't available may not be as straightforward as it would be under traditional distributive bargaining. But the key aim, the key prize of this approach is the long-term benefit to the quality of the employment relationship, to the degree of trust and the degree of cooperation that can be achieved within the employment relationship. These are the key drivers that should keep bargainers on the straight and narrow, and that they should keep at the forefront of their minds in trying to convince principals that this is the right route to go down.